Hey, Robert, thanks for joining us today's way of getting started. Give us a little background on yourself.
Brian, pleasure to be here. I enjoy listening to your podcasts and seeing your videos. So thanks for having me. And my name's Robert Bendetti. I'm a husband, father, ultra runner, car guy, and chief financial officer.
Wow. The ultra runner and CFO thing, is that a common correlation or?
I think that it's a lot more common, the car guy part of it. I find that there's a lot of men and women in executive positions that are into cars and track time. Uh, the ultra running, I bet there's probably more salespeople and
Yeah.
sales and growth leaders in running than there are accountants.
Yeah. Cool. What got you interested in being a CFO?
I've always loved numbers and basic math. I kind of, hit a physics and I was like, whoa, let's step back. Okay, that's a little crazy. And then I heard hey, if you're good at basic math, there's a degree and you can get paid a good salary. And a lot of people hate doing it. I was like, perfect. So undergrad in finance and then got an MBA and I wanted to become a CPA. They changed the rules. You had to have a master's of accounting. So I went back, got another master's degree in accounting and then sat for the CPA exam. So I'm like a legit full, certified bean counter representing today.
Cool. Now, CFOs tend to interact with either salespeople and certainly in when the company wants to buy something.
Yeah, I mean, I interact constantly. I think that people are always trying to sell me something, either directly or if it's expensive, I've got to approve it. And then on the other side, uh, I don't have anything to do if somebody doesn't sell something. So
Yeah.
I'm in the hip pocket, whether they like it or not. And in a perfect world, like me and the sales and growth leader are like connected and like uh, I'm trying to help them and they're trying to help me. So I think we're pretty involved.
Okay. Well, let's talk about like a company that you work. Doesn't have to be your company. Let's just general principles, and you can divulge whatever you feel comfortable with. When the sales leader is working with you, they are concerned about is it bookable and recognizable. Is that true?
Yeah, certainly timing, especially if there's metrics or compensation around it, then they're probably experts in timing and recognition and how it will impact the P&L and their commission, even more so than me. Sometimes I forget what the rules are and why they're so passionate about what they're talking about. I'm like, why do you care so much? I can talk to the controller, and then I realize, oh, that they or somebody on their team is going to get a commission payment if I agree with them. So, yeah, certainly timing is very important to the sales leader and growth leader. I mean, as the CFO, often I'm a little more concerned with next quarter or next year than I am with what happened last month and when exactly I book something. But I understand when you have compensation and metrics in place, why those things become very important to the tactical sales leaders.
And what do you or what do companies typically need to recognize a deal? I mean,
Yeah, it's that there's a certain amount of that is specific to the company. But in
yeah,
a macro sense, you're going to need a paperwork in place. You're going to have like an agreement with terms and conditions, and then there'll have to be certain things specified in that document. And usually, either there'll be template forms like, "Hey, just use this, and we're all covered," or if maybe you have a partnership with a very large firm and the very large firm, the customer's like, yeah, I don't care about your piece of paper, get out of here. Here's what I'm going to give you. Then you just got to like highlight on the form, here are the 10 things that are present in this document that's in our document. Will you please, I humbly beseech thee, accept this?
yeah. And that there's kind of the rub, right? Because companies want to use their paperwork. Here's our purchase order with the T's and C's on it, and they sign it.
Yeah, that's the dance, right? And I mean, think about it. In a certain hat, Brian, like you and I are in a dance. We're working at the same company. In the best, if we realize it and we're smart, we're working together. And like I am dancing with you, you're dancing to me. Sometimes I'm lead, sometimes you're lead. And sometimes we use my paper, sometimes we use the customer's paper. But in the end, you want revenue and I want revenue. So we got to agree. And um, so, and then there's extremes, right? I know where you're getting at. One extreme is that the the sales prevention officer or the CFO, right? Let's just pause for a second, Brian. Okay, is the reason I'm here is
Oh
I
no.
listen, yeah, I listen to your videos. I especially like the small ones, the little clips where you do skits and you
Yeah.
dress up as the CEO. And I think it's like Dwayne, the marketing guy, and then there's a sales guy who's always like fabulous, and then there's the accountant. Okay, and the accountant, I actually bought the shirt and
Did
it
you?
didn't come in on time. That says the accountant hourly rate. Like I love that shirt. Like that's super cool. And I wanted to wear it. I wanted to be like, hey, boom, it didn't work out. But here's the thing: in your videos, the accountant is always like the punchline and the problem. And I quote: "Sales prevention officer, the bad guy. The CFO is terrible. The chief no officer." And the only one that was funny is when you said, "I'm not the sales prevention officer." You said, "I'm the commission prevention officer." Okay, that was actually really that was funny, and I laughed hysterically at the bit where you said this account was talking to the CEO, and you said, "Want me to call HR and start laying off salespeople?" And and the account was like super happy about it.
Excited. Yeah.
That made me crack up. Okay, I kind of like that. I don't know what your question was, but I just wanted to say, not all CFOs are terrible people, and
No,
CFO.
well, there's motives and responsibilities and historic things. I mean, because you have to defend an audit, you have to defend the deal if the company recognizes it, right?
For
Because
sure.
if for some reason it goes south, customer doesn't pay, the customer wants their money back, the customer sues, the customer feels gypped. You know,
Yeah, I can get in trouble, and the bigger the company, and if it's public or private, you can even get in more trouble if I recognize revenue before I'm able to. So it's not just my opinion, and the accountants are not just trying to be mean. There is a little bit of discretion, but there's also just like a lot of rules, and because some bad actors, there's more and more rules every year, and then they change them. So if you work somewhere where it seems like, man, revenue recognition changed and we have this whole new rule for some reason, it's not that your accountant is annoying and out to get you, it's because the rules change. And I just have a checklist and I'm following the rules so I don't get in trouble, right? And my job is to keep everybody out of jail,
yeah.
and that's what I'm here to do. And I ask the sales and growth leaders that it becomes in Q1 it's less important, and we have more discretion because it all flush out, right? Q2, Q3, and that's like, oh gosh, is this all going to get settled? Q4, you bring a big deal, a week before the end of Q4, and it's kind of on the line. And in Q1, we let it slide. Well, in Q4, it's like, I got to close the books, I got to report, and man, this is just in the gray area or just over the line. You're going to start feeling the squeeze. And so, as a
Yeah.
sales and growth leader, know that, right? If this is you are in period 12 and this is a big customer and a big deal, and they're going to use their paper and they're going to use their terms, and there's going to be some issues, man, either no, that's it's just going to get pushed into period 1 of next year and just be good with it, or okay, I have to have super accelerated effort here and I got to get this booked and bagged in week 1 of period 12 so all the dust can settle. Like, don't be surprised. Like, know what period 12 is, know your fiscal year, know what the 10 things are that are important. And don't be surprised if you feel like the rules are tighter and tighter and tighter as we get to the end of the year. And it is not because I'm trying to squeeze you out. It's probably because, man, that is on the line. That's a little over. And the auditors are going to be all up in my business. If I'm a publicly traded company and I recognize revenue too aggressively, I can get shareholder suits. Right. And you got your commission and you quit. Like, you're like, bye.
Well, certainly you have all of that. And I think what reps need to understand, and I think companies need to understand, is what is reasonable. Because like a SaaS company, I don't know if you've been in that space. If they don't pay, you just turn it off, right? So there's no hard deliverable. There's no marginal cost other than the cost of sales.
Yeah, there are specific rules about how you recognize software. And, often that payment occurs at one time and then it's covering you for a period. And there's rules about how you define the period of performance and your obligations to service the customer and not. And again, all of this can get worked out with a conversation with your controller or CFO. Like, you don't have to guess. And I tell, I, I request the sales and growth leaders that are on this call, number one, talk to your CFO. Like, ask them out to lunch or coffee, and or to go on a walk, and just establish a relationship and have them walk you through things like this. And where's the gray area? What should I look out for? What's your pain point? What's something that you personally maybe are a little on the conservative side, so that you can build that rapport with that CFO.
And how about like just mindless paperwork like the credit app, where it has zero value because they all lie on it. There's no, and they either pay or they don't pay. And their D&B rating is much more telling than what they tell you.
Yeah, at most firms, what it is that what you're trying to confirm is, for the permanent file record of this customer, is that you're dealing with a person who has the authority to engage in this relationship, and they can speak on behalf and request trade credit for their organization. So there are some rules around that, and that's, you could leave the whole credit application blank. I've done that probably, when I was a small and mid-market CFO. When I'm signing credit apps, I just sign the bottom of the credit. I don't fill out any of it. But I'm just proving that I am an agent of the corporation. I have the authority to, on behalf of my company, as a representative, engage in trade credit conversations. So if something doesn't work out later, I can prove, like, hey, I shipped you this product, and this employee who had signature authority signed for this. Somebody's paying. Without that, I have less recourse, regardless of the D&B credit score of the company. It could have been just some Yahoo employee who works in the warehouse who wanted to get a trailer full of cigarettes, right? And had no authority to approve the shipment of those goods.
Yeah. I mean, that document, I see almost sales, too many years to remember, never had it any value, certainly on the sales side.
Oh, maybe. I mean, people don't pay, by the way.
Also, in a lifetime, not one person has not paid.
Oh, wow. That happens all the time. It's like a lot of my life. People don't pay all the time. So you've been super lucky. You have awesome relationships with.
They pay late, but they did pay.
Yeah, everybody pays late, but that happens 100% of the time. I have people not pay all the time. Every company I've ever worked, every quarter of every place in 25 years, somebody doesn't pay. And
is that can you determine? I guess there's a scale, right, from Mutt and Jeff's dog shop to IBM, their ability to pay.
Yeah, it's a big spectrum. There are some that were perfectly healthy companies that just go out of business. There are some where they're just disputing that invoice. There were 42,000 transactions that year, and this one, they just dispute that they ever received it. And in spite of all the documentation, the 10 things I won't go over, and proof, they're just like, nope, I'm not paying it. That can happen. And then it could just be like a service issue. It could be like, yes, this happened. I say it met the minimum quality standard based on the terms of the contract. They say it didn't. And then you just get an argument over, like, am I going to pay or not? And they're just like, no, I'm not going to pay. And sometimes you can pay half, and sometimes they just pay nothing. So there's a big spectrum. And Brian, you may be shielded from that just because you're in a certain industry, or the level of sales you were at such a high level with such premium customers, it wasn't an issue for you. But it's like a day-to-day battle for bean counters.
I got to imagine on SMB and mom and pop that, yeah, people go out of business. They lose interest. They no longer need the thing that they bought and don't want to pay for it. And I also have never seen my company either sue or be sued.
Oh, I do all the
Do
time.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I'm in the middle of like 3 right now. Every place I've ever worked, there's always some legal dispute in process at all times that has to do with a customer, vendor, supplier.
That's serious enough to go beyond lawyer letters.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, all the time. I never realized that. I have my business law book behind me, and CFOs, we constantly lament, like, man, I would have paid way more attention to business law class if I had realized how much of my job has to do with that. It's really quite amazing. And Brian, again, I'm not talking about small businesses when I talk about people going out of business. Mid-market and large billion-dollar firms go into bankruptcy all the time. And when they and or completely dissolve. And in the best case of bankruptcy, you may try for 11 years, 10 years, 17 years to get money, and you might get $1 on a $200,000 invoice. And that was $1 billion company that went bankrupt. And then there are firms that, maybe they're in the $15 million and then they just wind down. But I'm talking 10 million to $1 billion firms have financial trouble and cease to exist every year. So
it does, but mostly and they have. I'm not saying that they haven't. But the companies that I've worked with, the management team never saw it as fruitful to go a legal route. They either negotiated something or forgot about it, moved on, and wrote it off as a bad debt.
Certainly. And if it's that's why you have a bad debt accrual.
Yeah.
As a sales and growth leader, when you're having those conversations with the CFO and you're out at lunch, you're going on a walk, having a coffee, learning about them, getting on their good side, ask them about, like, how does the bad debt accrual work? Do you take X% of all revenue? Is it on certain types of contracts? Is it different for different divisions? What's the balance right now? Be soft-handed about that one. The CFO will panic about that question. But that's a great question and a good thing to learn. And boy, a CFO would love you, Brian, and the folks listening. If you're visiting the customer all the time, you're going to know way before I do that some trouble is amiss. And if your monthly touch-in or your quarterly coffee with the CFO, you walk in and go, man, the last time I was in with the customer, our business has been trailing down with them and I'm missing my number, but hey, heads up, there are less people in the parking lot and there was a supplier in the wait room. I was flipping through who came in. There were a lot of suppliers on the list. Great sales leader, read the check-in list if it's still handwritten and see if the competition's coming in and making visits, calls on your customers. And boy, something's up with that customer. And the next if we get some business with them, we might want to double check their credit if you haven't recently. Man, your CFO is going to love you for giving them that kind of heads up. They're going to be like, wow, Brian's on my side. I love it.
And although the CFO reports to the CEO, isn't the more scrutinous judge of the CFO the board?
For sure.
Yeah.
And 100% at a publicly traded company, there's a committee on the board that specifically has very direct access and sort of supervision over the CFO. In a mid-market or a public company, either way, I'd say, the CFO and the CEO are partners, and the CFO is like the internal consultant for the CFO. Like, hey, I'll be your numbers guy. Julie, you're the CEO. You've got to be a chief relationship officer and a vision caster and a strategy person and going out there and shaking hands and kissing babies and being out in front of the customer. Let me help you with like the numbers and the math. I'll be working my abacus. And so partner with the CEO. I'm working on this. I also need the partner with the sales and the growth leader, right? You're my internal customer. We're all in sales, and I'm not trying to be preachy. I'm trying to say this loud enough I hear it. Okay, but I have an internal customer, and that includes the chief sales and growth officer. So that's another partnership. But yeah, I mean, the CEO can fire me for sure. But yes, to your
But
question.
they usually have to answer to the board why, because it's usually a red flag if the CFO gets canned, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Because clearly you're not doing something that they want done, which
Yeah.
is usually not good.
CFOs don't get fired unless the board approves it. That doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. And the board is typically numbers focused, analytical, and
Well, the board's job is governance.
yeah.
And so all those things that I spoke about when we were talking about revenue recognition, that is the bigger umbrella around why is the CFO conservative about revenue recognition? It's because of the rules. And then there are not only rules around revenue recognition and accounting, there's all kind of rules, regulatory and compliance rules. And that whole umbrella, the people stand like holding that umbrella, that's the board, and that's what the board's job is governance. And that includes like, yeah, they're, hey CEO, what's your strategic vision for the next 5 years? Yeah, but like tactically, they're sleeves rolled up on governance, and are people following the rules? Are we all going to end up on the news, and are we all getting fired? And their connection to the company and figuring that out is the CFO.
And does your sales counterpart share with you the forecast so that you can scan it for red flags?
It should, for sure. I mean, if you're talking about a forecast for next year,
I
that's,
mean, like the current quarter, because they're concerned about bookable.
yeah. I think so. There's some duality to that answer. Usually, like the at a macro level, yeah, I have insight into the next quarter. You know, directionally, things going up, things going down, big movers, big rocks, and I can look at the pipeline, and if the data in the CRM is accurate, I can get kind of a sense. You know, and it kind of accurate salespeople and CRM. And but as far as bookable, like, you know, I'm an accountant, so I'm supporting a team of accountants, the controller, the manager, AP, receivables, payroll. And I'm also like looking back, like what happened last month? You know, so I'm pulled back into what's going on, and I handle the big rocks where Brian calls the controller and is like, I got a hot deal that I got on the 31st. Fax to me.
Well, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
I would have it sit on my desk because I know on the 31st this thing just slides right through. If on the 25th I've got 5 days of torture ahead of me.
Yeah, you're why I have no hair.
But you know, and I'll give you an example. Desert Storm. Okay, I'm up at NSA in a unclassified trailer selling millions of dollars of software to fight the terrorists. And I've got a CFO who's saying they need to sign our agreement. And I have the director of NSA say, I want to talk to your CEO. In 5 minutes, the deal's booked. Okay. He's got, I need a credit app. Okay. NSA does not fill out a credit app. It pays government dollars. The likelihood of them not paying on this piece of software, which is a dollar disc,
Yeah.
is zero.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely talking extremes. That does sound super silly. I don't understand why.
It's just
The senior financial leader of a government contracting firm should understand how
well, you know, government contracting was new to them.
Yeah. So that's where the partnership comes in, Brian. I would say we all have to take ownership. And if we were just having beers, I'd be like, Brian, what's your relationship with the CFO? Why don't they understand? That's partly your responsibility as a sales and growth leader to help them understand. And if they don't, you're supposed to be the teacher, and you should have a relationship where you walk them through and say, hey man, this is how government contracting works. And you know, here to verify, trust but verify what I'm telling you. Here are some sources. And if they, because that is nonsensical. So I don't know why they did that in that circumstance, because that isn't how government contracting works.
Well, they clearly have their job and their responsibility. And if for chance it goes south, they're attached to it, and they are, and I get that. But
Yeah, I think it's important to, when I've changed a lot of industries. And so there is a season that, because I've been into, let's see, hotels and aerospace and food manufacturing, logistics, textiles, and professional services. And so there's a season in each one of those for like the first year. If I got like a 5-year run somewhere, like the first year, I just don't know much about the industry. I know a
yeah,
lot about accounting, but I don't know much about the industry. So I, as an accountant, and I would tell this to other CFOs, like, admit that you don't know. You're not the smartest person in every room. And like, yeah, you got a form, but why do you need the form? And you have revenue recognition rules, but why? And then, so you can lean on a person like Brian, like, oh, hey, Brian's been in the biz for 10 years. He's had a relationship. This is the 50th transaction we've done with NSA. He's probably got a reason why he's saying what he's saying. He's been going out to lunch with me for once a month for the past 6 months. He's a cool
yeah.
guy. Like, he wouldn't lie to me. And then boom, we can close the deal and get on with our business.
And other than the customer paying, what's your concern with a deal?
I would say my initial thought is and this is, I'm going to pull an extreme of like salespeople. If they're not giving away like redonkulous payment terms, they're also like redonkulously discounting price. Like, I think like there's a big basket of salespeople. They're not the ones that listen to your podcast, but let's be honest, there are that are just like discount robots, where they're just like, oh, the list price is $1. I'll sell it to you for a nickel, and we'll make it up in volume. And like, I don't need to pay salespeople to give discounts. I could just use automation and AI, and I can give discounts too.
You can do that yourself.
Yeah, I don't need to pay a salesperson to do that. So that, I think, is annoying. Now, there are reasons to discount. So I'm not like, obviously, but just where your go-to move as a sales and growth person, I think growth is even too much. You're just a salesperson, and you're just like a discount robot. You have no skill, no talent. And when I complain about salespeople, it's that. It's the bottom 20% of every firm brings no margin and just headaches, and they cause all the trouble for everybody else. And unfortunately, they take 80% of my mind share, and they're only 20% of the staff, and they give every other real sales and growth leader a bad name.
And what would be your top piece of advice for a sales rep out there who's frustrated getting deals done? How do
Okay. I mean, I would say one thing, just, I'm going to put my hat of just the person sitting in the room and I get sold. I'll give a little tip, because I've seen some good and bad recently, especially with the whole virtual thing. It's even more stark. Is I think there's like the features versus benefit, and the features trap that some salespeople have. I see a lot of new salespeople, especially, and they're always the discounters too, that are trying to sell me something. All they do is talk all the time. Our 30-minute meeting is them talk, and it's facts and figures. Just its features, feature trap, blah, 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 blah. And then like I get the last minute. All right. Then I have another growth leader come in, and she's sitting there talking like 1 minute of the meeting. And then like, I find myself like 29 minutes in, I've just been like talking about all my problems and the challenges that I have. And in 1 minute, she identifies the benefits. What's in it for me, that the problem that this solution, which, oh, just by the way, happens to be my product, solves. And then she's like, oh, if you want more information, just like reach out. And I'm like, more information? I was like, yeah, I need that like right now. Where are you going? Like, I got an extra 5 minutes. Give me more, give me more, give me more. And that is what I would either praise those that are already doing it, or ask that, some of those folks that feel like all they got and the only tool in their tool belt is price and features, like, please shut up, stop talking. I know what you know already. You don't know what I know. So let the customer talk, identify the problem, the pain point, and then in a minute, boom. Now that you've heard them out, like, hit them with your solution to their problem.